Welcome back to another midweek episode of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Your host, Andrew Hines here. And today we're going to be talking about buying a hospitality resort and things you want to know, some do's and don'ts. I'm just going to go through some high-level stuff that comes to me from my experience doing this and my experience buying some other types of properties, things I've learned along the way. And hopefully you get some value out of it, because I've had some people reach out to me asking if I could expand on bylaws and interacting with the municipalities, asking me if I could give some tips and tricks for people thinking about buying a hospitality resort, even if it's just one single vacation rental, which I'm not the biggest fan of a single vacation rental. I much prefer the scalability of multiple. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. So I'll just be looking over at my notes here. First thing I want to say is when you're looking at buying something, you want to do the quick, dirty numbers. And those quick and dirty numbers are going to be based on something you know. So you might know somebody who has a cottage that performed a certain way, and say, you're looking at it like we were buying 5 cottages on 9 acres. So I was looking at people I knew who had cottages in nearby areas and how they performed, rough approximate size and amenities that they offered versus ours, and then putting a little bit of a bump because we're right on the water. Of course, you also have to look at, is your area different and how is it different? In our case, I was comparing stuff closer to Sauble, to Tobermory. Those are two very different markets, and they do behave differently. If I had it to do over again, I would have based my comparisons on other people who were closer, which, that's why getting to know your area and kind of trying to network within your area is good, because I was a little off on our numbers. We weren't as high as I thought we would be. Part of that is just that the market's changed. When there were the lockdowns, cottage country went crazy, and now it's more normalized again. So you just also have to be planning for that. You have, I would think that, if you're basing numbers on 2023 or 2024 up to date and you were looking to buy something now, that would be fairly indicative of what you would see going forward. But then again, I could be completely wrong about that. So the moral of that story is base your projections, based on your estimations on what you think your unit can do, based on the most current data you have, and make sure that you're going local. Find people on your street. You can use AirDNA. You can use certain tools like that. I'm sure there are other comparable services, but keep in mind that the data is not perfect from those. So it's best to look at the high performing listings, see all the amenities they have, figure out, are you going to be offering the same? And if you're not, adjust what you think your estimates are accordingly, and maybe do a high, medium, and low, and make sure you're comfortable with all 3 of those scenarios. So that would be one big thing that I would mention. A little bit of learning experience for me, but also just, good practice. And that's something that I would apply regardless of the asset I was buying. I would want to be looking at a high, medium, and low. And I did do that here. And I remember sitting with my partners before we bought and saying, hey guys, just so you know, I think there's a good chance this might happen. And hey, it did happen. But we decided we were comfortable with that. We proceeded anyway. So, get a building conditional analysis. So you're going to want to work with a commercial realtor, somebody who understands, and hopefully they have a good contact in the area that can do a building condition analysis for you. Oftentimes this is going to be an engineer, somebody who's going to go in, examine the structure, and comment that, hey, this is fundamentally sound. And the reason to do that is a lot of lenders want to see that. So even if you're going in with private money, which odds are if your numbers don't work, you're probably going to be going in with private money or a severely reduced commercial loan, which for a lot of people doesn't work. So they go with a private lender instead, while they normalize the asset, while they get income up and they get a track record up that they can show the lender. If you're doing that, you still need to prepare as though you're going to take it to a institutional lender like RBC, BMO, any of those big ones. So building condition analysis, you're going to want that. The lender might not ask for it, but then they might. And if there's something wrong, you're going to want to know now so that you're prepared for it. Also, get a phase 1 environmental. This is my approach. Again, everything here is my approach. Like, this is what I would do. I can't give you advice, but if I were to do it, this is what I would do. This is my advice to me. Take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth. So I would get a phase 1 environmental, again, knowing that lenders may require this. Not everyone will, but lenders may. And a phase 1 environmental basically is a history of an area. An engineer will take a look, what's been here over time. They'll do an observation, they'll go out to site, they'll look around, and they'll see if are there any reasons to believe there would be contamination here. They may do an air test and see if there's anything that comes up there. I can't imagine that there would be. I've heard such things, but I'm no engineer. But that's basically before you go into the ground. If phase one indicates there's reason to believe that there's contamination of soil or anything like that, then we go to phase two, which you could discover a problem. And as a buyer, I want to discover that stuff beforehand because generally speaking, municipalities can require that stuff to develop. Now, it just so happens in the instance of our development project, our cottage resort, the municipality is not requiring that, even though we already have a phase one. I did not see it on the list. We're actually just going through our development proposal and our site plan requirements to go for site plan approval, and that was not on the list. So that's a plus for us. I'm grateful, but not every municipality would be like that. The other thing you're going to want to do is look at all the different ways you can win, and I highly recommend modeling it out. Like once you get to the point. I mean, I guess you don't need to do this, but if you're an Excel nerd and you and you want to do it, calculate a model of an internal rate of return. Look out over the next 10 years and what amounts of money do you expect to get each year? How do you expect the performance of this building to change year over year? Inflows and outflows. Maybe at year 5, you're going to do a development. You're going to have several investments into new structures and new cash outlays to cover improvements on the site, but then you think that's going to generate higher income. You can actually model that out and run what's called an IRR. And this is something you can YouTube and see people showing you how to calculate that. But it's something that can actually really give you some insight into, is this actually the best place for my money? And never hurts to get wiser about placing your money and know how to put it in a better spot that's going to generate you more wealth over a long term. So that's my 2 cents regarding that. So going back to my point about confirming zoning, the site we bought was as of right zoning. So that's a C3 zoning for us. And that zoning allows us to add cottages. Like we ran a site plan adhering to setbacks and all that, and it looked like we could get an extra 40 cottages. Can you imagine 40 cottages on a 9-acre site? Of course, when I saw it, I'm like, no way, I'm not building that. Like I want lots of green space. I want it to feel like the cottage, not a tight little condo community. So I decided, no, we're not doing that. But I would like to do several cottages. So we came up with 16. So we've got a site plan sort of mapped out for 16 additional in addition to our 5 already. And we're just going through the process with that now. And why I point this out is like the zoning in the land allowed for an opportunity in addition to the existing revenue potential of the buildings. So we knew going in we could optimize the existing buildings, but more importantly, there's 9 acres there. There's a lot of unused land here, and this is waterfront. What if we could go ahead and build out something that would allow us to multiply that income potential and add in amenities and do all that fun stuff and create a spot that people want to go, and part of a bigger business plan. But that zoning, the as of right zoning, we don't need to go in and amend it. We're not taking it from industrial use and turning it into commercial hospitality use. It already allows for that. So that's a big plus. If you can find land that's already zoned for what you want to do, it's gonna reduce the hurdles. It's by no means a guarantee, but it reduces the hurdles to carry out a plan that you want to carry out. All right, so next thing, and I already did touch on this, is model your numbers using expensive money. Whatever you think private money is going to cost you, tack on a couple of points. Sometimes your plan might take longer than you think. Maybe you're trying to normalize incomes. You're going to go in and you're going to add amenities and hot tubs and all that stuff. And then you're going to take all those great photos, get models out and, promo it and pay influencers and all that and normalize the income. Well, that can take time. Keep in mind seasonality. When you're trying to take photos, you got to take photos in the great weather. So if you're doing this all in the winter and you got this great plan, you want to be ready for summer, well, you can't recreate summer photos in winter, but you could get creative with some AI stuff, I guess, but then you risk your guests saying, hey, it doesn't look like the photos. So keep that in mind. It could take longer than you think. Budget and have a buffer for this project to go on longer than you think. It's one of those things where you could be pleasantly surprised, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So that's just my 2 cents there. Next thing is require the existing owner to agree to like multiple years of training on the site. So, owner agrees, and you can talk to your realtor. They'll have a wording for this, but they got to show you the ropes. And that's everything from showing you how to winterize if it's a seasonal place, to opening it up, to explaining how the septic system works and how do we get internet to all the cottages. Like, these are things that you might not think of when you're buying it, but you don't want to pay for 5 different internet packages. And even if you could, it doesn't mean that you actually can get service over to the different houses on the site, the different cottages. So that's one of the things like we dealt with is how are we going to get internet over to all these different places? What's happening with TV in the TV packages. So, we had to work through that, and there were a lot of headaches in that process. So it's best if you can keep the existing owner on retainer for that kind of thing, which we did, thank God. So I was blowing up his phone quite a bit early on, just as we got things normalized, we got our systems up and running. There's always going to be growing pains there, learning pains. What I did is I looked at it as an investment. I figured our first year, we're gonna hurt the first year because we're buying mid-season. We bought in May. We weren't up and running. It was obviously going to be painful, but as time goes on, we could normalize. We could get more income across more units. Of course, in the longer term play as we develop, and we knew there was a long term play in this one. So, but you've got to make sure that you're okay with that. And 99 times out of 100, I'm going to say investors are going to want cash flow right off the hop. That's really hard to do. So you just got to decide if that's something you're ready for. I can't possibly recommend getting into something that's going to be cash negative to anybody, because that's a big burden, and you got to be ready for that if you're going to do it. All right. So I already mentioned this, but observe the tech infrastructure. Big thing, get your septics inspected. So especially when you're buying in rural areas, cottage country, odds are you're on a septic system. That means you've got multiple houses or cottages feeding the same septic. How does it work? Is it all gravity fed? Are there sub holding tanks that pump into bigger tanks? This is all stuff you got to look into. Pay a local company to inspect it all and explain it to you. Go out for the inspection, understand it all. Because operationally down the road, when stuff comes up, you're going to want to be able to explain it to your maintenance people, or you're going to want them to be there. Better yet, make sure they're there. Whoever's going to be doing your property management, make sure they're there. They want to understand everything, but you want to as well. And record those conversations. If you can video them, like video the winterization, the shutdown, all that, so that you can build standard operating procedures for everything that's going to be done. So you can ask sellers for these things, but odds are, you're buying from so many moms and pops that have owned for 20, 30 years, and they've just always done it their way. They didn't run it like an organized business because, let's call it like it is, they didn't need to. There was a time where you could buy these and they would perform far more adequately relative to the price that they cost than happens today, because obviously assets are more expensive today. Which means we have to be more sophisticated. We've got to be better at operating them. We've got to be better at being creative, being optimizational. Is that a word? So we got to make sure we're doing those things. And that's just some of the learning lessons. Other stuff I would say is don't be in a big hurry to go renovate right away. You can do subtle changes, better photos, price optimization strategies. And the key thing is make sure your listings are good. If you're going on Airbnb, explain everything. Be thorough. Don't leave anything as a question. Get drone footage, explain your site, make sure it's just absolutely crystal clear what you are offering, because what so many people do is they just don't take good photos and they don't have good descriptions. Use the text and characters that you're allowed on Airbnb, explain everything, and that way you can get more people understanding what it is you're offering, and you can hopefully get more bookings as a result of that. There are many other things you could do, and I'll surely get into talking about this again in the future, but big thing is analyze your competition. Go on AirDNA, sure, find out who the high performers are. analyze the crap out of their listings and figure out how you can differentiate yourself, but how you can take what they're doing well and apply it in your own. And that's the key. Don't invent the wheel. Find out the top 3 performers in your area. What do they have in common? What can you do with your site? How can you stand out? And pay for good photos, pay for good influencers, pay for good marketing. Hopefully you're buying enough units that you can afford to spend several thousand, $5,000, $10,000 a year on giveaways, on paying for influencers to come up to your place. And make sure you have a good spot that they can video, because they're going to come up, they're going to stay in your accommodations, they're going to show all that it has to offer, give you great photos in exchange, and that's the stuff that you put into those listings, and you can really make your product shine. So I think it's an exceptionally exciting space to be in. It is an intense commitment to run a hospitality resort. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you have a team set up if you're going to do it. I can't stress that enough. You cannot do this on your own, especially if you work full time. You've got to have a team. Do not kid yourself. So if you have specific questions on this topic, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me a DM on Instagram at the Andrew Hines. You can send me an email, andrew@andrew-hines.com. Hospitality is something I have a fair deal of experience in now, although I know I don't talk about it as much as I could. But I'm more than happy to hear what you're wondering about, because then I can expand on that. And I also want to thank everybody who reached out to me after I said I was thinking of stopping these midweek episodes, and said, no, don't. Like, I like this. Here, do more of this. A whole bunch of people really piled on and let me know kind of what they thought, what they were hoping for more of. And that's exactly what I want. Keep that coming. I want to keep doing these, but I just want to make sure it's a value to you. I don't want to just talk to a camera, which thank you everybody who reached out and communicated your thoughts. It's much appreciated, and I'm going to keep trying to make these better for you. So thanks guys. We'll see you on the weekend episode.